Hello, everybody, and welcome to another live developer Q&A. My name is Josh Allen, aka Community Manager Lore, and I'm joined today by
Paul Kubit, senior game designer on World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody.
Hello. Hi, Internet. So we're going to be talking about patch 7.2.5 today. And if you remember the last time we had Paul on, we were actually talking about patch 7.1.5.
That's right.
Which had like a Brawler's Guild and a whole bunch of other stuff in it. Patch 7.2.5 is another example of what in Legion we're calling one of our, I guess, smaller patches.
Sure.
Is
Yeah,
term
0.5
for it.
patches,
0.5
smaller
patch.
patches. Sure.
Yeah. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that here today. Got lots of questions that came in from you guys. But as a smaller patch, obviously there isn't as much there wasn't as much that needed clarification about specifically the content in this patch. Remember, Paul for example, he's not a class designer, so he's not going to be able to talk directly to class balance questions. We are going to have a AMA. We've mentioned it a few times. We're going to have an AMA coming up sometime in the next couple of weeks, and I believe that's going to be taking place on Reddit, where we're going to be talking about class changes and getting basically the whole class team in a room so that we can talk at length about class changes. So everybody who's looking for answers on class changes, just keep an eye out for that. We'll be doing a full announcement of that really soon.
Yep. I want to mention that we did see a lot of questions, a lot of really good questions come in when we asked for questions for this Ask a Dev, and a lot of them were based on class stuff, and they're really good questions that we think do require an answer, and so we want to be able to answer that. But we have a lot of specs in the game. And this particular medium is not the best way to be able to deliver that information, because if you're one of 36 specs, if we wanted to do an Ask a Dev where we talked about 36 specs and just kind of keep this stream going all day, we could. But it's most of it's going to be uninteresting for most people, except for that part where you get to your one spec.
Yep.
And video is not that easy to kind of parse through if you want to get a specific part, whereas something like a message board or text is easier. So we want to answer those questions. We just want to do it the right way.
Yep, exactly. Another thing that we're doing a little bit differently today, because there wasn't a ton that needed clarification on the content side for this patch, is we're actually going to be showing you a bit of the Chromie scenario, the Deaths of Chromie, actually, a little bit later. We got a bunch of questions we're going to get through, and then at the end of that, we're actually going to do a real quick semi playthrough of the Chromie scenario.
Yeah, mostly spoiler free.
A little bit. Mostly spoiler free. Yeah.
Yes,
indeed. So anyway, let's actually get into these questions and get things started here. So the first question came from Zajara, who asked, will the Trial of Style take place on a specific week of the year, or will it be recurring like Pet Battle Week and other weekly things like Timewalking? So before we actually get into this question entirely, just for anybody who hasn't been following along with the PTR, maybe hasn't been following along with the news coverage, fan site coverage, etc., can you real quick give us a rundown of what is the Trial of Style that's in patch 7.2.5?
Sure, yeah. So the Trial of Style is an event which happens in Azeroth periodically, in which the Blood Elves of Kel'Thalas hold a competition in which players are invited to compete with one another based on fashion. So what happens is you go to you enter a queue, you enter an instance with 6 players total, and you'll be given by the judges in that space a theme to kind of base an outfit on. That could be something like dark and shadowy, or fun and flirty, or epic purple. And there's a whole bunch of different themes that kind of guide you on what you want your transmog to look like. Then you have a couple minutes to choose your transmog and to adjust your haircut and other appearance options you have. And then you'll get pulled up on stage 2 at a time. So if you're on stage, you'll be able to stand up there and wave or dance or slash shy or anything like that. And everybody else will be able to choose. I think the person on the left has a better transmog. I think the person on the right does. And then additional people are brought up on stage. It's not a direct knockout tournament, so you're just really competing for votes. And then at the end, first, second, and third place get rewards, as well as a consolation prize for everybody. So it is technically transmog PvP, but it's kind of a more friendly type of PvP. Another important part about this event is that during the duration of the event, not just inside the Trial of Style, but Azeroth-wide, All transmog is free, and barbershop services as well. So if you want to take this 5-day period to change your outfit daily or hourly, or your appearance, you should be able to do that. And it's a little bit more of a time to experiment, see how people react with that. And also just if you haven't been interacting with transmog because of the cost, because it costs a couple gold or a couple hundred gold based on your character level, then now's the time to do it without as much interference. So
Cool.
To answer the question, will it take place on a specific week of the year? Maybe. Like, these are some of the things actually we've been thinking about. You might notice that I described it as an event, not a micro holiday. We intentionally kind of backed off from calling this a micro holiday because that carries a little bit of baggage of having a yearly cadence. And this was originally designed as a micro holiday, but we kind of in the playing found that it felt a little different. Like, it felt like one day would definitely not work for this. 3 days actually didn't feel long enough, so we made it a 5-day event. And I can totally see a world where this ends up in the calendar more often than once a year, twice a year, or quarterly, something like that. Like, it could totally be possible. So it really depends on how it feels once it goes live with events like this. We've play tested it on the PTR and in internal environments, but you never really know how it feels until it's live, and it might feel that yearly is actually the right thing. Also possible it could be more often.
Yeah, and it's not part. Another sort of part of this question. It's not going to be part of the bonus week rotation. At least at the moment, that's not the plan.
Yes, correct. That's not the plan.
Yeah.
That's who knows where it will end up in the future.
Exactly. Yeah, this micro holiday.
Yes.
If only there was some term that meant both macro and micro at the same
Right.
time. Another question here from Uruk asking about the Trial of Style, who asked, any reason why Trial of Style rewards are just rewards that are already obtainable in-game? This seemed like a perfect opportunity to bring back some unobtainable transmogs like the plate set from Scholomance.
That's a great question. So, like I mentioned, this event was originally concepted as a micro holiday. And one of the things we've been trying to do a lot with micro holidays was vary the way that we reward players. So we have a lot of ways that we can, deliver rewards in game. You have experience, artifact power, currencies like order hall resources and things like nether shards, gear. It's a pretty big one, right? Gold and things like that.
Yeah.
As well as normally with holidays, you'll have things which are permanent unlocks. So things like a pet or a mount or a title and things like that. With micro holidays, the duration of these events were short enough that we wanted to make sure that it didn't feel like you were missing out if you missed the holiday or the event. We actually wanted it to feel skippable. If this is not an event for you, then you can say, I don't want to do this. This isn't for me. And if you do, then great. You can play it for the fun of it. Giving some examples, there's the Hatching of the Hippogriffs holiday, which happened a couple months back. But really, the only thing you get from that is a little hippogriff on your shoulder. And most players won't do that event. They'll say like, oh, all I get is just a cosmetic thing that doesn't matter that much to me. That's great. That's fine. Like, it's not for you, and that's okay. There's other things in the game. Because there are a couple people who see that and like, I get a little hippogriff on my shoulder for 5 days. Like, what must I give in return? So
everything. No, not everything.
You just have to go to Feralis and like sit on an egg for 5 seconds. That's pretty much it.
Everything.
So there's also other types of micro holidays which give a little different rewards. One we had just a couple weeks back was the Glowcap Festival in Zangar Marsh, which gave you Sporagar Rep. And Sporagar Rep is a permanent thing that you can get on your character. And this was probably the best day out of the year to get that. But it's not something that's missable. You can get Sporagar Rep anytime. Literally dozens of people get exalted with Sporagar every day. Except for during this holiday in which it's several thousands times more people get exalted with Sporagar.
Yeah.
And that's the direction we went with the Trial of Style. This is something that is obtainable in game. They are previously obtainable transmog appearances, but things that are not as easy to get or not as desirable to get anymore. They might be from things which are world drops out in the world or just quests you're not running anymore. So it's very possible that you already have those transmogs on your character, and if you were just going to run Trial of Style just to get that and then cut and run, that's fine. You don't have to do it. If you want to do Trial of Style for fun because you want to engage in some dress up PvP, then you can still do it, and that's fine. So that's kind of the reason we went that direction. Another thing to mention too is that this is the first season of Trial of Style, and so those vendor lists are a little sparse right now. But fashions change, seasons come and go, and there's no reason that that appearance has to be replaced by when we do a season 2 of Trial of Style, whether that ends up being in a year or in a couple months. So eventually there will be more appearances that you might not already have.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like we were mentioning in the last question as well, like Trial of Style is something that we're kind of in a way sort of putting out there and seeing how people react to it, seeing how everybody is this super popular, is this something that's more niche, and then we can sort of adjust from there in the future on future updates to it.
Yep.
So cool. One more question here on Trial of Style from Freyer, who asked, with the Trial of Style and all the emphasis put on Transmog and Legion, do you have any plans to allow hunters to put enchant effects on their bows or guns like every class can? So we were talking about this a little bit yesterday, and I know a lot of the illusion effects that are in the game now are based on old enchants that used to go on weapons like Crusader and so on, Mongoose, etc. And there wasn't really those for bows or guns before.
Yeah, in the past, you'll remember you put scopes on guns and bows for some reason. You put scopes on those too. I guess you could put a scope on a bow, and that makes sense. A crossbow makes more sense. But either way, that's the way the game was built back then. When we built the illusions, we were really just extending the weapon enchant visuals to be able to be reapplied again without actually having to have that enchant. We did not make the technical change to add those to bows and guns, and we don't have anything to advance, at least not, or to announce for at least for 7.2.5 for the ability to put those enchant effects on your bows and guns, because they weren't built that way. And also, like, maybe from an artistic standpoint, like the art was made like, this is supposed to be a fiery sword, not necessarily this is supposed to be a fiery gun. Like, there could be a world where we think that's something that we want to have, but it's not something we're putting in, at least not in this patch.
Yeah, it's really interesting feedback for the future, though.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Question here from Zeron, who asked, are there any big or even medium-sized secrets in WoW that are still undiscovered? If so, any hints? Loved Kosumoth and Mind Riddler. So, do you have any medium-sized secrets hanging around?
Some micro secrets?
Yes.
Maybe. So, I mean, obviously, I'm not going to tell you what the secrets are.
Sure.
Because that would spoil it. I actually think maybe announcing the presence of secrets spoils it a little bit. But I will say that foreshadowing exists in the game now in places you might not expect it. So keep your eyes open. Keep your theories. Throw your theories out there. Share them with other people. There is some interesting things out there that maybe even if they have been discovered, the importance of them hasn't been really determined yet. Is that cryptic enough?
I really want to troll people with some fake advice right now.
Yeah.
And just be like, just look really closely at rocks.
Right. Yeah.
And everybody will just be staring at rocks.
Start with Decimus.
Yes. Cool. Next question here from Foxy FX, who asked, pretty straightforward, will we be able to get our class mounts after Legion?
Yeah, absolutely. This is just a thing you can do now. So the Legion Fall campaign ends with an achievement and then unlocking that quest line to get your class mount. So if you haven't gotten it yet, or if you don't plan on getting it this expansion, or if you want to get it on an alt later, when you can maybe go through the content a little bit quicker, that is something you'll be able to do until the end of time.
Nice.
And forever.
I don't think we should quite commit to that.
Okay. Sure.
You never know. Question from Miko, who asked, do you plan to add more pet battle dungeons, maybe more difficulties, or even raids versus bosses? So there is actually a new pet battle dungeon in 7.2.5.
There is,
in the Dead Mines, yeah?
Yep, so a new pet battle dungeon coming for the Dead Mines in 7.2.5. So you have that to look forward to, Miko, if you weren't already aware of that. And we'll keep adding pet battle content as long as people are interested in it. Much like anything else, I think that this is one of those parts of the game that a sizable percentage of our players get really excited about and look forward to updates to. And so as long as those players exist, like, we have lots of ideas and lots of actual plans for ways that this could go, as long as it continues to be worthwhile for us to do it.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things that we've sort of brought up a couple times now in this Q&A so far, is it kind of ties into the core of, I think, what the goal of the .5 patches is, which is that in a game like WoW, like there's so many people playing the game, so many varied tastes of the way that they like the game, and so many different variations in what they like to do in the game.
Yep.
It's good to have patches that are just sort of like saying, hey, you there, maybe you're not the majority of the player base, maybe you're not like this massive sub community that's really out there, but you're still a sub community that exists and is interested in the game, and you're really really excited about that content. It's good to be able to sort of throw some content out there for those sort of subgroups.
For sure.
Awesome.
Like another point on that is that like we started doing these 0.5 patches in Legion because not just because we wanted to have these smaller bits of content, but more just we wanted to have more times when that proverbial train leaves the station and we can say like, here's something new, because we want to be able to react to feedback or just the general feeling that we haven't had a lot of pet battle content in a while, or we haven't had a raid. It feels about like the right time for a raid now.
Yeah.
Or an outdoor questing zone, or a new prototypey feature like the Chromie scenario or something like that. So having more patches, even if they are just smaller ones interspersed with larger ones, gives us more opportunities to respond to that and say like, okay, this feels about like the right time to do a pet battle dungeon in this case.
Nice. All right. Question here from Felicenda. And I know this one is a little bit outside of your normal scope, but we were talking about this, and so I happen to know that you can answer this anyway.
I'll do my best.
Question from Felicenda, who asked, can you give us an official answer on the means of upgrading your legendaries to 970 item level in patch 725?
Okay, yeah, so I can. First of all, the unlock is not actually in patch 725, but it is when the Tomb of Sargeras unlocks, which are two events which are fairly close in time, but not actually the same thing.
Yep.
So the way that it will work is fairly similar to the way that you upgraded it to 940, which is via a quest line that has you collecting quest items from sources such as completing emissary chests, killing raid bosses, PvP chests, and so on. The same types of sources that we had in the past. One change, which actually was present in 715, but after a hotfix, was that you don't actually have to accept the quest to be able to start collecting those quest items. You will be able to, if you do things out of order, if you say open your emissary chest or open your weekly Mythic Plus chest before you accept that quest, you'll still get those items. So there's no reason to enter a ticket and get your items refunded or feel like you did it wrong. You'll just get them. So that should make it a little bit less of a math problem or a did you do your homework problem on which order to accept things at the start of the new patch or the start of the new raid and tier unlock. Other points is that the items that you will get from this will bring your legendary to 970. It will not increase your item level by 30 points. So if you happen to have any 910 legendaries still laying around on an alt you haven't played, or maybe you haven't played since before 715, then you don't have to do the first quest and then the second quest. You just go straight to 970.
Cool. So really straightforward, sounds like, and very similar process to what we had with the 910 to 940 upgrade. Just a little bit, we just cleaned it up a little bit, basically.
And the numbers are bigger.
That's also important. Speaking of bigger numbers, here's a question from Trivia Cow, who asked, Moo, of course, will World Quest rewards scale up for the Mythic Tomb release?
So the base item level of World Quest rewards will not. Those went up in 7.2. And what will happen is that when the Mythic Tomb release happens, then the item level cap increases. So items that Warforged Titan Forge up will be able to Titan Forge up to a higher cap than they did in the past. So you will be able to get higher item level items from World Quests, but the actual base item levels that you'll see on your map will not increase with this patch.
Okay, cool. That makes sense. Like you said, they did just increase not too long ago in 7.2, so that makes sense. Question from Skyriser, who asked, do you intend the difficulty of Black Temple Timewalking to be closer to LFR or more towards normal/heroic difficulty?
Okay, so we have a new thing to talk about, which is
Yes.
Black Temple Timewalking, right?
Mhm.
So one of the new things, which is going into 7.2.5, is a new type of time walking content. Time walking is where you have a group of players have their level changed
Yep.
to be able to participate in old content. In the past, it's been dungeons, so you're able to go run Burning Crusade, Ice Crown, or Lich King dungeons, Pandaria, Cataclysm, and so on. This is the first time we've actually had a time walking raid. So you'll be able to go back to Black Temple. When you enter Time Walking Black Temple, your level will be brought down to level 70. Your item level will be brought to a level which is about what you would have had when you go to that, when you were in that level band. I think it's like in the 130s or something. I'm not actually sure what the number is. And you'll be able to fight against some of those bosses and get rewards which are appropriate for your character level. So if you're a level 110 character going in, you'll actually get gear which is appropriate for a level 110 character. So that's what it is. It's going to be released alongside Burning Crusade regular time walking. So during that same week when you have Burning Crusade dungeons, you'll also be able to run the Black Temple time walking raid. As far as your question, Skyriser, how is the difficulty going to be? It's going to probably be tuned close to normal, maybe the low side of normal. We weren't dogmatically against LFR level tuning, but just when we looked at some of the Black Temple encounters, they were a little bit more complex. Remember, this was in a day where we didn't have multiple tiers of raid difficulty, and Black Temple was a pretty serious end game raid. So, so some of those encounters had mechanics which were pretty brutal, and to remove those hurt the feeling of actually going back and playing this encounter with kind of the legitimacy that we would have wanted.
Yeah, there's supposed to be like a real strong hit of nostalgia, especially for like people who went back and who were playing at the time, or people who maybe didn't experience Black Temple the first time around, but want to get at least as close as possible to that experience again.
Exactly. Yep. So tuned closer to normal. It's like I said, it's actually the lower side of normal, and that is because the gear rewards you'll be getting from it will be commensurate with the normal Tomb of Sargeras raid gear. But this is a raid which is only open for a short duration.
Right.
We don't expect you to, go in week after week after week, because you can't do that. It's only open for 1 week. So it will be a little bit easier. There may be raids or raid groups who are only able to get to a certain point, and that's okay. But you should still be able to get a couple bosses down, get some good gear, have a good time, and maybe a little bit of nostalgia hit.
Nice. Let's check this next question here. It's another one about Black Temple Timewalking. Came in from Delritha, who asked, how will raid groups be handled for Black Temple Timewalking? For example, pre-made or LFR, similar to how the Molten Core event took place.
So we are the way that they will be handled is you go in with a pre-made group. So we wanted to be able to go in with a pre-made group because we want you to be able to go in with your guild, ideally. Sure. That is something that the LFR system just can't handle, because your guild could be different sizes. You could raid with 10 people, you could raid with 30 people, anywhere in between. When you use more of an LFR style queuing, then you have a fixed size. We would have to dictate, no, Black Temple Time Walking Raid is 20 people or 25 people or whatever the number is that we decide is appropriate for that event. So you go in with a pre-made group. You can just, like I said, go in with your guild or your normal raiding group, or you can use the group finder to find groups. We've seen a lot of people do that for lots and lots of other types of content. So ideally that shouldn't be too difficult to do. And then the way that you actually do queue into it is through an NPC in Shatrath. It's the same guy that you would go to turn in your time walking quests to be able to, get those time warped badges when that event happens. So talk to him. He'll have a gossip option, and you'll say, I want to go to the Black Temple, and then your group will be queued. Do it that way because the original Black Temple does still exist. If you want to walk through the front door, you will go into Black Temple, but it will be the original level 70 Black Temple. And more importantly, your level will not be brought down to 70. So you can still one-shot Illidan if you want. I mean, not one-shot, but yeah.
You can one-shot him several times in a row, and then the phase transition happens,
Yes.
and then you one-shot him again.
Yep.
Next question from Manabender, who asked, how many of the boss mechanics in Black Temple Timewalking are being preserved? For example, will we have to farm Shadow Resist gear from other Shiraz, or will the single player routinely wipe the raid on Gore Fiend? So you kind of talked about this a little bit already, saying that we were trying to preserve as much of that as possible.
Yes.
Does that extend to things like Shadow Resistance gear from other Shiraz?
So Shadow Resist gear gets a pass because that mechanic actually just does not exist in the game anymore.
Right.
No, you won't have to farm Shadow Resist gear because we don't really have Shadow Resistance. Also, that even if we did, I think that betrays the point of this event, which is it's not something you have to prepare for weeks in advance. It's something that you should go to when it comes up and be excited when you see it and be able to play it. Cool. So no, you will not have to farm Shadow Resist gear. As far as single player routinely wiping the raid on Gorefiend, depends on the player, I guess. So the mechanics will still exist, and so those are some things that will have to respond to. And so maybe not routinely. I mean, we'll see how players respond. We have maybe a little bit more rating savvy players these days, and so it's still something that can happen, and those mechanics are things you still will have to respond to. Nice. So be careful who you invite, I guess.
Or at least maybe go dig up that Flash game from like 2008.
Yes. Yeah.
That was going through how to do that thing. All right. Next question from White Crow, who asked, 725 and the opening of the Tomb of Sargeras raid comes just over 5 months after the opening of the Nighthold. How does the team feel about the length and pacing of raid tiers in Legion so far?
I would say overall pretty good. Like it seems like it's about the right time to get a new raid now. If we had said a couple weeks earlier, a couple months earlier at the release of 7.2,
yeah,
I think we're agreed that would probably be too early. We would have one of those problems where it felt like we didn't get long enough in Nighthold, which is a cool raid. We saw this maybe in Lich King with Ulduar, where Ulduar we only got a couple months in there, and it was a great raid. And then the next raid came out, Trial of the Crusader, and is also a good raid in its own right, but didn't have that epic feel of Ulduar, and people felt sad that they weren't being rewarded appropriately to go into Ulduar anymore. They maybe weren't even finished. So now it feels like it's about the right time. On the other side of things, you have, if we'd gone a couple, 5-10 more weeks past this, Nighthold would be starting to show its age a little bit more. So it feels pretty good, I think. Again, like this is one of those things that we do kind of use the community as a barometer for as well. So if people are saying we're sick of this, we can't stand it anymore, then we do respond to that. But the general feel that we're getting right now is actually okay.
Yeah, that's one of the big things that we've been able to do in Legion with raid tiers also is sort of decouple them from patch releases, which has been really good. It meant that like Tomb of Sargeras, the raid, like the actual data for the raid was actually in patch 7.2. So we didn't necessarily need, and we still don't necessarily need 7.25 to release in order for Tomb of Sargeras to come out.
That's right.
It's just something that we can sit and say, okay, we've got this raid ready to go whenever it's the right time for the raid to actually come out.
Yep.
Which is great. It means we don't have to wait for a content patch to release a raid. It means we don't have to rush a raid out because we want to get the rest of the content that's in that patch out. I think we've been pretty happy about it.
Are you rating it all right now?
Off and on with my rating guild.
Yeah.
I make them drag me along for ahead of the curve.
Yeah. My guild is on Heroic Gul'dan. So we beat Heroic Alisand last night. Need to get Gul'dan this week. Otherwise, I don't know, have to find some pugs or something like that. So it feels about the right time for me.
Yeah. Perfect timing.
Yeah.
Question here from Blood Guzzler, and this was one that we actually saw a whole bunch throughout the community, who was asking, what exactly are, quote-unquote, armaments of the Legion, the reward from Glory of the Tomb Raider?
Right, okay. So what this is if you look at the achievement for Glory of the Tomb Raider, it says, item reward, armaments of the Legion. And the plan here, well, first I'll start by saying, we've actually changed the plan. So armaments of the Legion don't exist anymore. You'll see it's not in the build on the PTR, but the next build you see will have a new reward there. Armaments of the Legion were weapon appearances. So we had a lot of really cool Legion weapon appearances that we had already had, used on enemies and things like that. That we thought like these are things that like actually look really Legion-y, and you can use as kind of a cool way of showing your prestige as having completed this raid. And also wasn't a mount. We kind of didn't want to do a mount this time because we just unlocked class mounts yesterday. And that with the Tomb of Sargeras coming soon after, we didn't want those to compete with each other. So this was the way we were looking at rewarding that. We ended up going back on that decision in large part because we didn't have appearances for all the different weapons in time for this achievement to come out. We didn't have daggers, I think, and fist weapons, and so we wanted to make sure everyone had something that worked out. So that will be replaced with a title. You'll be able to get the much coveted Tomb Raider title, along with maybe some other stuff as well. So that will be coming the next build you see.
Yep. And the actual appearances themselves, just to be clear, they are available elsewhere. They actually come through the Legion assaults.
Yes, that's right.
So this was going to basically be something that allowed you to get the appearances from the Legion assaults through a different means.
Yep.
Decided to just do a unique reward for the Glory of the Tomb Raider instead.
Yep.
Which I think is a good change.
It's a good question.
Cool. Question here from Ranthe, who asked, for the Great Gnomeregan Race mini holiday, was there any coordination with the player group that ran it previously?
Yes. Okay, so let me give some background here.
Sure.
The Great Gnomeregan Race is a micro holiday. It's not a mini holiday ran thing. It's an important difference.
Yeah. Mini holiday is something else entirely.
that happens in October, in which gnomes, in a large amount, level 1 gnomes, and other Alliance races too, actually, will be running from Gnomeregan in a foot race all the way down to Booty Bay. We're cheating a little bit by taking the deep run tram from Ironforge to Stormwind, so you can kind of avoid those scary fire zones. That's an event which is coming up. There's also a community event which has happened for the last several years, which is the Running of the Gnomes event, which also happens in October. And so to answer your question first, yes, there was some coordination.
What a coincidence.
Yes, with them. Really what that communication was with them was we had this idea. Micro holidays, they're usually based not on real world holidays like the bigger, Winter Veil is loosely based on Christmas, Lunar Festival is loosely based on Lunar New Year, and so on.
Yeah.
Micro holidays are more based on things that happen in Azeroth or could happen in Azeroth. So, example, Call of the Scarab event based on the first ringing of the Scarab Gong in Encourage. In this case, the Great Gnomeregan Race based on this event, which seems to happen in October, where lots of pink-haired gnomes run from Gnomeregan all the way down to Booty Bay. So we did communicate with them to make sure that we, first of all, that they thought the idea was cool and that we weren't going to be, stealing any of their thunder from them. And yes, they were totally on board. They thought that it was a neat idea. And one of the things that was really important to us was to make sure that we didn't steal the identity of their event.
Right.
It's called the Great Gnomeregan Race. It's not the Running of the Gnomes.
Right.
There's not a prominence of gnomes with pink hair. If you see a bunch of gnomes with pink hair and pink tabards running through the game on that day, they're probably either associated with or showing some support for the Running of the Gnomes charity event. But other players can participate in it too that day. And if you're just running it for fun or just want to do something on that day, it's something that you can do even if you weren't aware of that event before.
Cool. Makes sense to me. Question here from Hulk Paladin. This is one that we've been getting a lot lately. Question is, legendary cap increased to 3? So it's more of a sentence that has had a question mark put on the end of it, but legendary cap.
It's a question.
Yes.
So no, we don't plan on increasing the legendary cap to 3. At least nothing to announce about that at this point. There's a couple reasons for that. One is, because we want to make sure that legendary balance feels right, and one of the ways that we're able to do that is just by limiting the amount that you have. One of the main ways we do it is we have had a number of patches and hotfixes where we've kind of tweaked values of legendaries to make sure that the ones which are out of band maybe feel less desirable or underperforming are brought closer to the middle of the pack. And the same on the other end. If something is way too overperforming, maybe it gets brought closer to the center of the pack. But we do want to make sure that if you have those 2 legendaries, that you're not going to be, it doesn't really matter as much which ones you have. Increasing the cap to 3 increases that variation a little bit more, and it also makes it take longer for someone who's rolling an alt or someone who is just playing the game a little bit more slowly to come up to that level, which is, a meaningful power increase, which is getting that second legendary. And we want to make sure that that's not an egregious amount of time, because there's, player perceptions that you have to have 2 legendaries to be able to participate in this content, to be able to join this group. And so we want to work along with the players to make sure that we're making it reasonable to get to that level. There's also just some kind of combinatorics issues with set bonuses and legendaries, where once you have a legendary, you kind of have that item slot locked.
Right.
And we also have, with 2 legendaries and 4 out of 6 set bonus items, you still have some room to move items around. If you get a cool update, you update one of your set pieces from normal to heroic, then maybe you can still make some changes. With 3 legendaries, those chances to switch things start disappearing rapidly.
Cool. Yeah, from talking to Ian about this before, it's sort of like the advantage of getting more legendaries past your first 2 isn't supposed to be that now you can equip more and more legendaries. It's more that you can now shift around what legendaries you're using based on either the situation you're going up against, like maybe this is a heavy AoE fight, so you want to do things a little bit differently.
Yep.
Or like you were saying, like set bonuses, maybe you get your shoulders to drop, your tier shoulders, and you're like, okay, now I can finally get my 4-piece, but I need to swap my legendary shoulders out for something else instead.
Yep.
Not specifically that I've got 6 legendaries, so I'm just wearing 6 legendaries.
Yep. Yeah. Survivability too. I swap in Pride as all the time, just if we're having trouble with a fight. Like, okay, like put on Pride as, and then the healers thank you whoever did that.
Nice. Question from Jealous here, who asked, why isn't the 3rd relic slot available upon reaching 110 by this point? So obviously currently it's kind of gated behind the class quest campaign that you get. Mostly I think for most players, you kind of work your way through it. Through most of it while you're leveling up, and then there's a few extra steps you have to do once you reach 110. But why not just make that immediately available at 110?
Well, I mean, there's we have not made that change yet. We don't have the plans to do that in 7.2.5. Really, we do want that 3rd relic slot to be the reward for completing the Legion, not the Legion Fall, but your class campaign.
Right.
And so that is the kind of place that's been. We do want to make sure that as the expansion continues, that process maybe feels easier. Also, just there's fewer people playing through that content now, so it makes sense to reduce the amount of work required to be able to play through that content. So and we have pretty much every step that is required in getting that 3rd relic slot unlocked has had the amount of content reduced by this point. We just haven't completely switched it over to being right at 110. And also, like, there's also something to be said for lots and lots and lots and lots of things in the game unlock at level 110. World quests and raids and all types of different content that that you weren't participating in when you were leveling up now all of a sudden become available to you. So there is some value in splitting those things up so that they have more meaning, and it's not just you get, instead of 14 things, you get 15 things at level 110. Is you get the 14 things at 110, and then this 15th thing takes a little bit extra, which requires an extra day or 2.
Okay. Cool. Next question from Vengeance, who asked, will there be any catch-up mechanics for champion item level, like how Dranic armor sets and Dranic weaponry were added in 6.2?
There are none that are we're putting into 7.2.5. Sure. That's not to say that we would never do something like that. I think that those were cool items. They were probably more necessary in a Draenor world where we had, your followers were a much more important part of the way that game worked. We spent a lot of time in the garrison sending out followers on missions. There was a lot more missions which rewarded a lot more items which were more important for your actual progression. There are followers and missions in this expansion as well, but they're not as big of a part, and so their actual level is less critical. Now we do see, this comes up every once in a while when those Sentinex elite strikes come up,
Right.
or those the Sentinex elite strike, but the other two as well.
Yeah.
From the building, unlocking the building on the Broken Shore, and if you don't have those characters, your followers maxed out, then those can be pretty difficult to do. Adding catch-up mechanics actually kind of takes away some of the prestige of being able to do those. The point of those missions is that, like, you have actually got to a point now where you have really, really good followers, and you can send them out to get some pretty good rewards. So catch-up mechanics, at least at this point, kind of dull the coolness of being able to complete those missions. And if you are able to complete those missions, it might feel like, yeah, it's just a gimme, but no, you did actually get those followers up to item level 900. Yeah. So like, it's easy to forget because it's kind of a slow burn, but like, that was a lot of work.
Yeah. All right, let's get into some Chromie questions.
Yes.
This one came from Emery, who asked, will the Deaths of Chromie scenario be doable once every 3 days like the Withered training, or is it going to be available like it was on the PTR? And so obviously we've been sort of setting the stage for each of these types of content that's coming in 725 as things come up. We're gonna, like I was saying earlier, we're gonna actually walk through a little playthrough of the Deaths of Chromie scenario here in a few minutes. But do you want to give us a little bit of a real quick like backstory on what's going on here?
Sure. So what you'll see is what happens at level. Well, you have to be level 110 to go in. This is a single player scenario, vaguely roguelike in nature, in which Chromie finds out that she's going to be assassinated in the near future. And so she asks you, the player, to help her prevent that assassination. So you travel with her into the near future. Since it's the future, your level is higher. You're level 112. Your item level increases up to level 1000 because you have theoretically better gear at that point. And you find, due to the nature of the time waste, you actually only have 15 minutes to be able to prevent Chromie's death, which is probably not going to be enough time to save her. And so she's going to die at the end of those 15 minutes, which is a huge bummer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially for Chromie.
Yeah. Fortunately, she's a time dragon. She has control over the time waste. And so you can go back to this period in time and play it over and over and over again until hopefully you are able to prevent this attack from happening and save her. So that's the rough description. To answer your question, will it be gated with time at all? No. You can, if you leave the scenario, you finish, probably because Chromie died. Then you could just talk to Chromie in the present day again and say, hey, let's try that again, as many times as you want without any cooldowns or currency costs or anything like that.
Nice.
There is a little bit of a mechanic which might convince you to maybe wait a day, which is Chromie does have a talent tree. As you build reputation with her, she's going to earn talents. It's very similar to the Order Hall talent tree, where you have those binary choices of, do I want the choice on the left or the right? And the first couple tiers of that tree are instantly trainable. You can say, I want this one, and you have it instantly. Once you get a little bit farther down the tree, then some of those talents might require a day or two for her to train. So you can continue running the scenario, and if you're really good and have a really good plan, and maybe with a little bit of luck, you might even be able to finish the scenario the first day it's out, which is awesome. You could get some bragging rights for that. If you find yourself running up against a brick wall and you're just not able to get past it, then maybe wait. You have 16 hours until this talent comes back. I'll just wait till tomorrow and give it a try then. So that's the only real type of any gating that exists there.
Nice. A question here from Not Healed, which you think you mentioned during that. Will the Deaths of Chromie scenario be doable any time of the day without needing any kind of currency like nether shards? So we're just saying that it wasn't gated behind time of day or any sort of reset like that.
Nope.
And it's not gated behind a currency either.
Yep. No currency gating there. So you just can, you have to be level 110. I think that's the majority of it.
Cool. Yeah, it even scales your item level and everything. So you don't even necessarily need to be particularly geared. You can just go in and do it.
Yep. And I would mention you have to be at least level 110. So if in the future we have higher levels, this content is not going to go away. It's not necessarily Legion content. In fact, Chromie's standing on Wormrest in Northrend. So this is evergreen content that if a couple expansions down the line you want to go save Chromie from being assassinated, you should be able to do that. And the difficulty, in theory, should be about the same as it is now.
Cool. Question here from Joey Giggledon. Okay. Who asked, the Deaths of Chromie and equally the artifact challenges are great solo content. Will we see challenges like this added or expanded upon for more players? And why was the Deaths of Chromie made for only one player? So specifically talking about the number of people in the actual instance. I think it's there's kind of an interesting interesting thing to point out here is that I'm pretty sure artifact challenges plus more players are basically just dungeons.
Right. Yes. So yes, if we added more players, that kind of does exist in the game, which is instanced group content, dungeons, raids, and things like that. So and also the way that at least the Deaths of Chromie is built, and other games which have this kind of roguelike personal progression in them, is there's something that needs to be resolved when you have two different people go in, one of whom is very advanced in this scenario. You know, they've discovered a lot about Chromie's assassins and are able to get really far. And then you might have a second player who's going through their first time. How do you resolve that? Is that something that you skip the other person ahead so they have access to all the information the more advanced player does, or vice versa? It's not unsolvable, but just something that ended up working out better in this case for more of a storytelling perspective with a single player scenario. So that's why it's built solo in this case. We may see more in the future. I mean, this is kind of an iteration of sorts on Withered Army Training. Withered Army Training was the first type of repeatable content like this, where we had a single player going in with a helper, in that case a couple helpers, through the same location periodically, and trying to get a little bit farther each time with unlocks, which made it easier on later times. There were things we learned from Withered Army Training for sure. A lot of people really liked it. A lot of people had challenges with things like tuning. If you were a tank, you probably loved it.
Yeah.
Others maybe not as much.
Yeah.
And also just the way we rewarded it. You know, there was a lot of stress which came from the 3-day lockout, as well as it being kind of feeling for a lot of people mandatory, that if you wanted to get your Nightfall and reputation as fast as possible, that was a very gated reputation, and this was one of the ways that you got a lot of rep for it. So you had to do as good as you can, and there was no room for error. So with the Deaths of Chromie, we tried to iterate and fix some of those issues with tuning. We did a lot more playtesting on our side to make sure that DPS and healers and tanks all felt pretty close with one another, as well as the way the reward structure and the gating worked.
Cool. Well, we've been talking about the Deaths of Chromie a whole lot at this stage. I think it's time that we go ahead and start showing everybody what exactly is going to be happening in this scenario, because it is really cool. I was playing through it for basically the first time a few days ago. And so that's the video that we have. We're about to show you guys here, and we're just going to sort of talk through it as it plays.
Yeah, like I mentioned, this is mostly spoiler free. It's going to be the very, very beginning. So if you wanted to stay completely spoiler free, we're going to show you a little bit of the first maybe 5-10 minutes of what goes on in here. But encourage you to stay along for the ride.
Yep. And the other thing to mention is that this was done in a test build, which means there's a couple of little weird things that pop up from time to time. There's a couple bugs that weren't quite yet fixed at the time that this was recorded. So just if you see something weird, that's probably what it was, basically.
Yep.
So here we go. So yeah, this is the very, very start at this point of where you first talk to Chromie. You head down to Wormrest Temple, and she has a quest for you titled "The Day That Chromie Dies." So it's very cheery title for that quest.
Yep. You'll see it rewards you a one-time reward of a bunch of time warp badges. You'll be getting those along the way.
We're traveling through time.
Just loading screen for Chromie.
Yeah.
So and this is your first time in. You really don't know what's going on yet. So just get a little scenario prompt to talk to Chromie and find out what's going on. You are Chrome.
Yep, fairly ominous objective there on the side of the screen. I believe it.
Am I dead yet?
I can't actually see it very clearly at this exact moment, but I believe it says something like "Witness the death of Chromie." So yeah, you can kind of tell what's about to happen here.
You also see Chromie's talking to herself here. One of the things that we'll watch the death happen here real quick. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 big bullets kind of coming from mysterious locations, and Chromie gets blasted.
Yeah.
So it seems like a coordinated attack of sorts.
And there we go. That's the death. No, there's more to it than that.
We have Chromie talking to herself there. You know, when we were originally kind of planning the scenario out, the idea actually was that someone else dies. We were trying to figure out, like, okay, Chromie wants to stop an important assassination. Maybe it's Alexstrasza. She's standing right there. Maybe someone like Thrall or Jaina, or, you know, who would be an interesting character that we could protect. And as we started thinking more about it, you know, when we get into time stuff, things get a little timey-wimey, I guess, is a way of describing things. And we really wanted to just, instead of avoiding it and trying to explain everything, just embrace it. So have Chromie save herself.
Yeah, it's really interesting as a concept then, particularly because now you sort of see Chromie dying all these different times, and meanwhile the version of Chromie that's hanging out with you is just like, oh, darn it, I died again.
So here we're going back in. Like, okay, we know that I do get killed. We've confirmed that. Let's talk to some of the ambassadors here at Wormrest, see if there's anything going on. Calicos mentions there's some ley line disturbances at the Blue Dragon Shrine, Azure Dragon Shrine, pretty typical. The Lord Aetherius here mentions that at the Green Dragon Shrine, they're having problems with their sleepers being restless in the sleep, having issues with nightmare.
Yeah.
Again, pretty run-of-the-mill Green Dragon problems, but worth investigating.
Quick Bible thump for Ysera.
Yep. Ysera asked her. Remember, this is a couple, maybe in the near future, maybe a year or two, maybe a little less, but it's been about 10 years since the Lich King, and so undead have been mostly quiet-ish in Northrend, but they've been showing up again at the Ruby Dragon Shrine. So she wants you to investigate that.
Strange.
Chromie says,
Oh, I did see that black dragon earlier today. What was his name? Deathwing? No, not him. The other one. The one with a hat. Pretty sure he was headed to the Obsidian Dragon Shrine.
okay, so
We'll check it
a
out.
black dragon showed up at the Black Dragon Shrine, which is odd because there's not a whole lot of them left.
Yeah.
It's been pretty quiet.
Sounds like
So,
you've got some
all right, we got some
dragon shrines
information,
to
and
investigate.
here comes that
Let's
ominous
go,
panning camera again.
Investigate some dragon shrines.
So we're out of time.
Sounded way better in my head than
Chromie
it
gets
did out
blasted.
loud.
A
Who
little
could
bit
have
of
seen this
collateral
happen?
damage. Yeah. Even Bolvar's upset.
Chromie, no! That's what that loading screen
Haven't we
is.
done this
It's been
before?
like that this whole time. That was totally foreshadowing from like 7 years ago when Lich King
Yep.
came out.
All comes together. Close the time loop. Okay, so we kind of have the story set up and a couple clues to send us in the right direction now. Now it's actually time to enter the scenario proper.
Yep.
So Chromie's going to make an attempt to send us in.
All right. I'm chronoporting us to a point 4 hours before the attack happens. That'll give us plenty of time to untangle this mess. Huh. That's weird. Something's blocking me from accessing that particular moment. No worries. 4 hours was probably too early anyways. Let's try 1 hour. Now I'm starting to get worried. Whoever orchestrated this attack really did their homework. They found a way to block my chronoports. Let's give this one last try.
Get in. Very good.
Time travel, very difficult.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that we're trying to unravel here in this scenario is who's actually doing this? Who's so mad at Chromie that they've done
right
this
there.
this cross-temporal attack on her? So you can see here we're in the scenario. Everything's gone black and white. Black and white, as we know, means time is frozen.
We meet again.
Obviously.
Yeah, or at least slowed down very significantly. You can still see yourself moving a little bit.
That did it. We are now at a time 15
Yeah, I did
minutes
appreciate
before
as I was
my
going
death.
through this that it actually slows down like all of the
Probably won't
animations
be
and
enough
everything
time
as
to
well. It's
save
really,
me,
really
but it's the
fun
best I
little
can
touch.
do
Like
for
you can
now.
see the character is halfway through the saying hello to Chromie animation at this point.
Yep. Okay, now here we have a couple options. We can go to her talent tree or start the scenario. And this is her talent tree, so we'll only unlock the top tier. On the left, we have the ability for kind of an AoE stun, and on the right, just a flat 20% movement speed, as well as both of those have damage and healing increase as well. So each talent tier is going to have a similar structure. You have something to choose on the left or right. That is not an actual achievement, just
Yeah.
due to either a bug or being in an internal environment. But we've chosen, okay, let's take the AoE stun here. But yes, later tiers will have a choice as well as kind of a baked-in bonus. And usually those bonuses are pretty big.
Let's go.
Yep.
Okay, we're ready to go. So the scenario started. You can actually see on the right there's a blue bar with your timer. So we have 15 minutes to stop this attack. We have a couple leads. We know that, okay, there's something going on in 4 of these dragon shrines. All of them, actually, except the bronze dragon shrine. So let's go check them out. If you looked at your map, you'd also see a couple dots on the map. So no explicit quests telling you exactly what to do, but a timer and some leads. So you can go check it out.
Yeah,
also, once you get to these places, if you, I don't think we did, but there's an NPC here who's got, oh, look, we've got some more information. So if you happen
Spotted
to
him out of
notice
the
that,
corner of my eye.
good. You can go talk to them and find out what's going on.
He's basically just saying, there's some bad things happening.
Get down there and look for clues.
Yep. Ley lines.
Maybe the disturbances
bad
are
things.
coming from
Bad
whoever wants to
things.
kill me.
Okay.
Got that ley line bling.
So, okay, elementals with red bars above their heads. Attack them.
Generally speaking, if you see an elemental with a red bar, it's a good idea.
Yep.
So now at this point, I'm basically, as I was playing through this, well, there's some bad guys, I should just attack them and see what happens. I accidentally, I believe, pull about half of the entire dragon shrine here at this point, so it's going to take a second to actually get through it. Fortunately, this one is awesome, so it's down relatively quickly.
I did it.
Chromie's with you, by the way. She fights alongside you the whole way. She has some cool kind of sand-themed abilities, as well as a couple interesting kind of healing abilities as well. The ability to rewind time and doing so rewind your the damage you've taken. So, okay, you looted some stuff called scraps of vellum. If you mouse over it, you'll see that, like, okay, I need 50 of these to put together an entire scroll. And again, no explicit directions that this is what you need to do, but kind of get some direction. Like, okay, I should probably get these things.
Yeah, just find out what happens if nothing else. Which is one of the cool things about this scenario is a lot of it is very investigative. And I'm sure that within a few days, if not already, there's going to be like guides that you can look up and find out what it is. So if that's the way that you want to approach this scenario, sure you can. But to me, it's a lot more fun to actually go in there without having to read the guide and just be to try to figure it out myself.
Yeah, and this is probably as spoilery as this review gets. Is like, okay, you're kind of seeing how the Azure Dragon Shrine works. They're not all necessarily like this. I mean, there'll be some things to uncover. Some are more combat focused, some are more kind of puzzly focused.
Yeah.
Like you'll want to kind of complete the mysteries of each of them, and you might not be able to do all of them in one 15-minute span. In fact, most definitely will not. So you're going to have to try and figure out how exactly you can do that at some point in the future.
Yeah, we purposefully picked out one of the more straightforward initial sort of puzzles to figure out here. They're not all just go kill a bunch of elementals and pick up some stuff. They get a little bit more complicated. We were just trying to avoid being too spoilery with this video, so that's why we went ahead and decided to do this pretty basic one for this actual video.
How are we doing on scraps? Not there yet. Looks like we got about...
I think it's about 48.
Okay, so we're close. One or two of these little ones. We're good. And about 11 and a half minutes left, too.
Yep, we're making fairly good time for basically the first time coming in here. And bearing in mind, of course, that we only have that first row of talents as well. Because some of the later talents power up Chromie, they all have that extra passive bonus on them as well.
Yep.
So now we've collected enough of these scraps that we're able to turn in this quest.
Yep. And the scroll says effectively that this is being written by their master, whoever's controlling these ley elementals, and he's on one of these platforms up above the area. And if you see, there's actually a quest turn in, bang.
Yeah.
Above one of these guys, there it is on the mini map. You can bring Chromie over there, and she senses something.
You can tell she senses something because an exclamation mark appeared.
Yeah. Comes over, starts doing some time magic, and uncovers Void Gargantuan.
Oh God.
So we actually had a separate recording of this, which we ended up doing this one second time because we said basically like, Josh, we don't die as much.
So, yeah, this guy, he's a little bit trickier than I was really expecting at first. Like, especially having just killed a whole bunch of elementals, which they basically just died. Nothing too fancy. The first time I was coming through this section, I died, I think, 5 times on this guy, because each time I was like, oh, I don't actually know what I did wrong. Like, obviously there's the big pools of stuff to not stand in, but there's a few other mechanics going on there. Fortunately, I eventually remembered that I had to sweep, and that
Almost down. Both almost down. You got him.
first time, one shot, with no prior experience needed whatsoever.
Yep, exactly. So, okay, we've
Heal up real quick.
unraveled some of the mystery and like, okay, oh, we got a couple things here. So this Chrono Shard will point us on a quest. But we also got this thing called the Sands of Time, which are things that are going to drop periodically. Can drop really anywhere here in the scenario. So looking at the Chrono Shard quest, it says, okay, I got to bring this back to Wormrest so we can tell where and when it points to. So we'll probably do that next. We also have this the Sands of Time. And this is an item that allows you to kind of control the timeways. You can choose 1 of 2 timelines. In this particular case, you can choose, do I want reputation with Chromie? In this case, 100 rep. Or do I want a temporary buff during this run-through, this 15-minute, or at this point, kind of 9-minute remaining run-through of Chromie, do I want to get more damage and healing? So, yeah, as you progress through this and actually earn more talents, you'll get more and more and more of these Sands of Time. And they don't always reward those 2 things. You could get significantly more rep. You could get extra time called stolen time, so you can get an extra 10 to 30 seconds just added on to your timer. You can get treasure. You can get, if it happens to be a time walking weekend, you can actually get time warped badges from those. So you can just kind of head on here instead of chain running dungeons as an alternate way to earn time warped badges.
Yep. So we're gonna turn in this quest at Chromie now. At this point, we've found that Chrono Shard. We're not quite sure what is going on with this Chrono Shard. It's warm for some reason. It's flying around, and what's this that we've uncovered?
I've been there a time or 3. I meant to say 3. I have a sneaking suspicion that the enemy is planning a cross-synchronous attack. Why else would they be using Chrono Shards, right? I can tell you're a little foggy on what that means. Basically, they're attacking me at multiple points in time simultaneously. These guys really know what they're doing. I wouldn't be surprised if they had a bronze dragon on their side.
So there we go. We've unlocked a portal to somewhere else, in this case, Mount Highjaw. Now, if you don't remember, actually, like Mount Highjaw is a place where we've seen Chromie in the past as well. There was back in Cataclysm 4.2, I think, with the Molten Front.
Yeah, I think so.
It might have been 4.1. I think it's 4.2. We had the Molten Front area where there was a quest at Cethria's Roost where a bunch of adventurers would help you out with a world quest. And Chromie was one of the people who showed up there. So that's a place that we've seen Chromie at a point in time. We're not going to go in there today, but that is a place that we can explore at some point in the future.
Yeah, so there's more to it than just Wormrest, basically, I guess, is how we can put that. Again, trying to avoid too much in the way of spoilers. But there is actually quite a lot behind this scenario that, I don't know, I'm really excited to see how players end up reacting to it. I'm excited to get in there and do it myself, because you've now seen pretty much the extent of my experience with the Chromie scenario. So hopefully there's no other bosses that are going to surprise me and murder me a million times.
There's plenty.
We'll have to rename this scenario to the Deaths of Lore. See how that goes.
We can make that too.
That's a bit morbid. But yeah, so that's our little run through of the Deaths of Chromie scenario we wanted to show you guys.
Want to do a reminder for class feedback?
Yes. So we will be having in the very near future, within the next couple of weeks, basically, we're looking to do an AMA on Reddit where we'll be able to answer a whole bunch of class questions. So keep an eye out for an official announcement on that with the details on the time and date and everything. Just trying to figure out what the best date for us to get. One of the reasons that we want to do it on Reddit is so that we can get all of the class designers in a room at the same time and be able to answer as many questions as completely as possible. It's part of the reason that it's tough to do a class Q&A like this, because we actually need like 8 people to be able to really answer all those questions.
We see the questions. We're reading them. They're really good questions that demand answers, so we want to get them to you. It's coming soon.
And the other thing that we wanted to mention here today Oh no, actually, I had a couple other things that I wanted to mention as well.
Sure.
Because we've been talking a lot about content that's in 725, and just because this is a good opportunity for us to sort of draw attention to some things that maybe you did. I say 715 a second
You
ago?
said 725.
I
You're
said
good.
725.
Yep.
Excellent. A couple other things that are worth pointing out that we didn't get questions about. One of them was surprising to me. We've had someone ask about heirlooms in literally every Q&A for Legion up until this one, and then there was no heirloom question, at least not that that I was able to find. But there are heirloom updates coming to 110. You'll be able to level your heirlooms up to where they'll scale all the way up to 110 in patch 725. And also a cool little extra addition, which I just found out about yesterday, actually, which is that you'll be able to get an item of some kind. I believe it's actually classified as a toy. I'm not entirely certain off the top of my head, but it actually gives alts flight paths. So you'll be able to learn a whole bunch of flight paths in Eastern Kingdoms and in Kalimdor through an heirloom piece of some capacity. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
There's some new PvP brawls
Yes.
being added.
Yeah, there's 3 new PvP brawls being added. The Temple of Hot Mogu, which
Mm-hmm.
is in Hot Mogu, but with increased haste and a couple additional mechanics.
Yep.
And then a couple kind of paired mechanics. One is Deep 6, which is a selection of battlegrounds, but with only 6 people in it, so it's 6v6. And then Packed House, which is arena maps, but with significantly more people in them. I think it's actually 15 versus 15. I might have that number wrong. It might be 10 versus 10. But a very packed house with kind of single elimination, last man standing type type arena with teams. So 10 versus 10 or 15 versus 15, I think.
Yep. And the only other thing that I wanted to mention, just because I know a lot of people are going to be asking about it, a lot of people wanting to know when is patch 725 actually releasing. We don't have final confirmation on the release date just yet. We're still making sure that all the builds and everything are set and ready to go.
There's a lot of hoops we have to go through, and we're
Yes.
getting to the end of it, but we don't have absolute final confirmation.
Yeah. Part of the reason that we tend to be so hesitant to fully announce patch dates is because oftentimes we don't know until just a few days before the patch whether that particular build is going to be ready to go.
Yes. Something could go wrong.
Yes, but that said, we are, fingers crossed, knock on wood. That was probably really loud, actually. I apologize for that. Aiming for, hoping for next week, basically.
Yes. Shooting for next week.
Yep. Keep an eye out again for official confirmation on that. Once we're actually able to completely officially confirm that patch date. And that's all that I had. I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to mention while we were here.
No, thanks for playing. Thanks for all your questions, the great questions today, and for following along with us through some of the Chromie and other adventures in 725. And can't wait to see you guys out there.
Yep.
Wish us luck on Gul'dan this week.
Good luck. You have 2 weeks because Nighthold or Tomb of Sargeras doesn't open until the 20th.
Yeah.
So
I do have one other thing. It's boat day.
It is boat day.
Yeah, micro holidays. Actually, it started yesterday, but it's a 3-day holiday. So
Yeah.
1,000 Boat Bash is a micro holiday, which is going on right now. Everyone calls it boat day. Even the characters in the game call it boat day. Yeah, head on down to 1,000 Needles, complete a couple world quests, do a little bit of exploration, and you might be able to build a boat, which you can use anywhere in the world, moves really fast over the surface of the water, a little bit faster, I think, than even the fastest flying mounts. But you are stuck to the surface of the water. So, and it's a boat, and you can have it. Yeah.
that's cool. Having a boat is always the best thing. Okay, yeah. I guess that's going to wrap us up here today. Thanks again so much, everybody, for watching. Thanks, Paul, for coming on and answering questions and talking through the Chromie scenario with us. And we will see you guys next time.
See ya. Bye.